Oseo.
Oseo.
Cherokee greeting. Wave the great feather for the good of it. The event is the winter solstice. Very, very significant event. In fact, something's coinciding with that. I can show you this. Up there in Nevada, Vivian Olds, who has a gallery, your gallery at the Pyramid Lake High Reservation, is having her winter solstice show, in which myself and Eric and herself are included in that. And this is her announcement or flyer for that event. This is my painting for that event. So that's the way we can start this event off. You got that? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. The winter solstice in this theme that I'm presenting is both Celtic and Navajo. In a brief mention of what these names are. Navajo is a Spanish name, but basically it means keepers of the field or the great field, which kind of metaphorically works out because their culture has really all the elements of both human and nature. In Navajo, their name is actually Dene. Dene. They stem from relatives that are over there in what we call East Central Asia, actually the East Tarim Basin, in a vicinity called Khotan. And their relatives there call themselves Dene. Pretty close, you know. The anthropologists also relate them to people, the Americans. These are all American names, they make up these names. The Apaches. The Apaches' name for themselves is Indi, like that. And they have a related language. What relates them is Turkic. The roots of the Navajo language shows that it has West Turkestanic roots. And the Apache, the Ninte, also, they are the Turkoman. So anyway, they're related by language more than locality. Here in the Southwest, they're related by locality. They're next to each other. So like that. As for the Celts, the Celtic people seem to have generated from somewhere in East Europe, around the Caspian Sea perhaps, in a main body, came across Europe, as we call it, you know, and their name is actually the Calde, which means the woodlanders. And pretty much that's the inhabited or moved through the conifer forests and into the British Isles, and then across the Atlantic, likewise, you know, to the conifer forests. And so that's part of this here. And there is evidence that's Celtic and how that the Navajo have mixed with them. It seems, evidently, that there was another branch of Celtic people that moved eastward, and came over here. It's very focused on the British Columbia up there. There's a lot of Celtic material on the rocks and so forth. So, you know, all of that. So, you know, people from east and west have variously come together here. And although the Navajo have Turkestanic roots in their language, they also have a lot of evidence of Gaelic. So that's very interesting too. The Navajo and the Na-Dene in the other part of the world are very, very eclectic people. So that gives you some idea. So the first part I'm going to say is Celtic. We could say Celtic America. And where I'm going to start is, I have to say, there in Nevada, there was the Truckee River. This river starts at Lake Tahoe, goes down to Donner Lake, and then goes due east through Reno Sparks, and goes all the way, long way, going east, way out to Pyramid Lake. And along this way, wherever there has been rock outcroppings, there are petroglyphs, a lot of them. And some of it looks very international. In other words, various people have been here and traveled that route. Also, now there's, you know, been, at some point they put railroad tracks, so a train runs along the Truckee River going eastward. Also, and there's trestles where it crosses over. This part here I'm stressing, I don't know exactly, 20, 30 miles east of Reno Sparks, the river enters into a gorge. At the beginning of this gorge, there's a huge rock outcropping coming out of the side of the mountain, massive like that. And that's called the Court of Antiquity. And it used to be, it was a roadside stop when the highway 80 East was going through there, and you could stop and see all the petroglyphs on these rocks called the Court of Antiquity. Since then, they widened that highway and did a lot of dynamiting, so very, very much of the petroglyphs that were there have been lost or damaged by fly rock. Now, for myself and Vivian, exploring the petroglyphs there, I walked all the way to the west of that outcropping, which is very blocky. It almost look like blocks of stone, and have petroglyphs. To the very west edge of that, I looked down and that there was this stone unlike anything else that rises up out of the ground. And that's what I'm depicting here. This stone here is the stone of Bel. And it is coming up out of the ground. It's, actually about this high itself. They were 5 feet or more, like that. And the volume is much greater than my illustration. But it is, crystalline granite. And it rises and it has these Celtic inscriptions on it. Near the top of the bowl is of the stone, I should say, is a bowl. A perfectly formed bowl that, a gallon or more of water it could hold in it. Above that, very neatly carved, almost as if it had been by a brush, is this letter here, C. And that letter C, I found, fortunately, has come from the alphabet used in Gaul. That is a Romanized province of the Celts, now France there. And what that means, Colin, means dove, because the dove is the person who guides the solar year, basically governs the solar year. In Navajo, that would be dove woman. So that's very significant because of these carvings that's on it. In Gaelic, this is Yahu Bel. And that is a formula also recorded by Robert Graves in The White Goddess that began in Egypt. In Egypt, this stone is called Ben Ben, which actually means Bel Bel, Bel speaks. The name used here in America, obelisk. If you watch the Washington news, often there is, I saw last night with the White House, and you'll see this tall spire rising up, as they call that the obelisk. That, the model, comes from Egypt. Why it's there in Washington, I don't know. Since it's definitely from another civilization. Now, this stone is like a gnome, where in the sundial, the gnome moves around you with the shadow in the time. This one moves up and down, up and down. So, the sun comes over until it's perfectly illuminated in the summer solstice, and after that, then the shadow comes up until it's totally in the dark, until the winter solstice. And in the winter solstice, the eagle from the ancient land underneath flies up and lands on top of the stone, and that begins the winter light. Also, within this bowl, there is an inclusion body, and that's what I've depicted here. It's coming out of the side of the bowl. This is a, in Indian it's called, bog sheath. Bog sheath is a clitorite. The clitorite, which is necessary for the birth of the next part I'm going to tell you, the birth of Holy Boy. So back to this X or cross here in the Gaelic forms a diphthong, yeah. And because you can't write who, that's why they put the C for the dove for Kalman, because who is, the goddess of light, you could have put it that way. Eve actually comes from the amplified name of Eve. So it's actually Yahu, meaning exalted is the moon. The total formula recorded by Robert Bridge, Yahu Bel. Bel is also the son of the sun, Gurin, the sun. So all of this is a stone dedicated to Bel. And that's basically, you would say, he's her Maksabul, he is her son of the sun. Here, this figure here is not on this rock. This figure here is Lug. This is Lug of the long arm and the silver hand. And that's how I could recognize it. It's located in Petroglyph Canyon at Ridgecrest, which there's thousands and thousands of petroglyphs. And my replica here is a little bit smaller than the ones on the rock, which is figured up high there. And Kathleen and Jim were with me there and, on a tour, and Kathleen saw it and yelled out, "Hey, Coyote, there's Luke." And so I figured Luke here, so I could say Luke represents the shadow part in this dynamic. In Egypt, this is figured as Horus for the light and Seth for the shadow. So that's why I have that at here. So all of that is moving through here. So this is the emphasis on the Celtic part. And then the Navajo part, as we're calling it. The Navajo have the same thing. They have the same thing. The Navajo culture that we call in English chantway is Hatal, and the chanter is the Hatali. And that's the main cultural system for those people, which still have it all intact. You know, I should say the Christmas that everybody knows, this Christmas of December 25th was only inaugurated, at the very end of the 16th century by Pope Gregory, like that. And up until then, the solstice was always that day that's celebrating the birth of light, the birth of the sun, birth of Christ, all of that kind of thing. Eventually, England, a Protestant country, didn't like too much, following something the Pope started, so eventually they changed it. And then the American colonies, eventually they changed it till we have December 25th for Christmas. That's the Gregorian calendar, so you just know. But before that, it all happened on the winter solstice, so that we can have all of that. Here with the Navajo, it's as if the Navajo had seen this very stone, or there's another one just like it, because in the ceremony of the chantway, the particular chantway is called the Sun House branch of the shooting way chant. So that's why you have these chantways, is what we call them, hatals, like that. The hatal, the chanter, actually makes a clay replica of this stone. A special, collected clay is about 10, depending on the guy, 10 or 12 inches high, like that, shaped just like this, with the bowl at the top. There it's called, the sky-reaching rock, and it has a whole involvement, with that. And in that, where I'm pointing out here, this inclusion body here, is because in that culture, light and water are essential for conception. So that's what we're conceiving here. What we're conceiving here, we go up here, this is actually called child born of the water, or holy boy here. And this, what I've made here, in a painting, I've replicated the mask. I made a series of these masks out of raw materials and had a show in Nevada with several of these, including this one, that was in the library there, and the librarian recorded over 300 people came to see that exhibit of mine, of these Navajo masks. In this one, I've used paint instead of raw materials, and because he is born from the water, like that. Nowadays, this mask is like a helmet mask. It's leather, I'm not sure if it's rawhide or whether it's softened leather. The impersonator, he wears it over his head. And now this around it for the hair was, in the old days, like Spanish moss. So it would be more like moss, so it would be he's from the water, you know. And so I painted that, representing that. Nowadays, the modern day more use horse hair, almost for everything here. And here you see this here. This is a symbol of this here. And what it is in Navajo, it's sipaul, meaning the hair cord, the hair tie for a woman. In the woman culture, she ties her hair in a particular kind of bun using that hair tie. So that's what this symbol is. And this is the symbol for this deific character, child born of water, or holy boy. So that's always his symbol here. And the red, and here this kind of triangle face here, the blackness is her, it's his mother. That's what it symbolizes. And here in the place of the eyes and the mouth, these are olivia shells, again for the water. Everything's indicating the water here. And the turkey feather also as a leader here. And I've surrounded this with coyote fur because coyote is the midwife in the birth of the child of the water. And over here, this is my coyote wand here, since he's the midwife here. And what takes place in this culture is like rain, the rain comes down and fills this bowl with water. And then this inclusion here, this is empirical. This empirical concept for conception is going to fertilize this water, so that this conception can take place. So it's very interesting that this is, a feature natural to the stone, as if somebody following this myth, actually put it there. It's part of the stone. And then what happens is that this water swells up and overflows. That's what I have here. It flows over like a waterfall. It flows all the way down here like that. And in the place of Lug, we would actually have Coyote. Coyote is here. Coyote wades into this pool of water and lifts up Holy Boy, raises him up, and holds him up to the sky like that. That's the way that he's all beginning here. So all of this, comprises in the winter solstice, Holy Boy, coincident name, for December's child. And all this is figuring for the winter solstice. It does look similar to the Christmas occasion. Maybe one took it from the other, but it's all pretty original here for that. So again, this figure here is neatly carved in the rock. Whoever the person who did all this would have to be from one of the Celtic countries around the Mediterranean because of this figure here. This figure here, I was lucky to find it. Is definitely from an alphabet used in the Romanized Celtic country of Gaul. That's the way we would figure it. This here, this is B-L. So this is Bel here. And again, this is Yahu, Bel. Again, this is Luke of the long arm and the silver hand. The only thing when I did this, the silver hand on the rock is even somewhat larger, and I was so fascinated with the body sense. I don't think I got it quite right. I'm pretty close. But what somebody looks like if they were holding up something heavy like this, a little bit tilted up. So it's a magnificent carving in rock with such a bodily sense to it. And most things on the rocks would look pretty stiff. So all of that goes, with that. In the Navajo, when the sun reaches its southern place, then there's a rattle. In other words, I should say, the home of the sun is in the east. And when the sun reaches his home in the east, there's a rattle. He rattles twice like that. Now when it's time for him to come back, he's going to rattle again. Twice like that. And there's a sky pillar. That sky pillar of the south, Yayami it's called. That's her. That's a woman that the sun's going to climb up the pillar that's in the south in order to begin to come back. That's what it means. So he rattles again to report. I mean, now I'm returning. Now I'm coming back. So that's verily a part of that. Now I'm going to read this part. I have to use glasses for this. So this is for child born of water. Child born of water, holy boy, is one of the faces of her female substance, her blackness, wet body, her epiphany of her revealing nature. Her first child bears a quality that is not meant to grow, but to remain as it is, as a child at the threshold, intact. The personal image of our living world needs this original child, which can only be presented in this way. Holy Boy speaks of his own childhood and of everything of that first sunrising. Holy Boy is the wonder of all beginnings and the wonder of beginning again. It is Holy Boy who leads us to imagine being in the world as in the first day of creation, to see anew for the first time. And here's the poem to go with this. Little heart, you have snug into me a spiral. You give birth to this mother's bud. Oh.